So watching that conversation with you and Tyler and Jim?
Dave Ford.
Dave, okay. Really gave me a lot of information. It answered a lot of my questions. And I'm still curious, like, how you see me fitting in. I feel really honored that I'm invited to be in this conversation in this project. And then there's that, I mentioned it the other day, this very young part of me that's like, why do you want me to be this? I don't have anything to offer, you know, that kind of thing. And I'd like to see how you see me fitting in, because I'm excited to be in on the conversation in MettaCare and in the learning like I get right now. Walking in where I'm walking in right now, I have a steep learning curve, and it really feels like, wow, there's just a lot of information for me to take in and assimilate right now. And probably not a lot of input to give, but that's just my point of view. And
You just want to make sure you have something to think about on your walks in Wyoming. That's all. Is that so?
So what you probably don't know is in 2014, I did this little project when I was in a program called Landmark. And really, it was a little project. Nothing much really happened, except I took maybe my second trip to Washington, D.C., and went and met with our then seated Congress members and their staffers about transforming our system of healthcare to a more care-centered model and a less bureaucratic
Can we
model.
only talk about relevant things in this conversation, please?
So, you know, in my experience, what you've created and what the vein I've been working in and towards. So, and with that in my background, I went and took the job in DC with Landmark because, well, this is where I want to be to do the things I want to do. And whatever happens with Landmark is fine, because ultimately I want to influence how healthcare policy is written in our country, like on a large grand scale. So,
well, it's clearly not a fit. I'm sorry you had to waste your time for small business.
Yeah, we couldn't be further apart, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that I leave there, come home with nothing really like that on my agenda. I'm like, I'm gonna just root down and start from scratch, you know, and see what comes of it. And then here we are. I don't know, not even 2 weeks later.
I want to just make sure I heard you correctly. You stated an objective fact about your interior sense of purpose and desire, which was to influence on a national level the way healthcare policy is enacted in America. That's not, you weren't reporting to me some document that you were working for, but that's actually an interior felt sense of your longing.
Yes.
And so then when you intended to come home to start from scratch, you walked into the hornet's nest of somebody saying, I want you to do that interior along with me.
Yeah, basically.
And I have this rough sketch of a vehicle that you could drive through that front door.
Yeah.
Just making sure I'm keeping up. Go on.
You're keeping up. It's totally right. so it's blowing my mind, like, oh, once again, whatever I thought was going to happen with my life or how I earn money is completely turned on its side. You know, I thought I'd have a massage client here and there, teach some yoga, have some workshops, do a transformational program or two. And yeah, and that's still possible, right? That's not like out the window.
What I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this is just bonus and fun. And what do you need, want, see possible?
Well, really, what I want is enthusiastic, empowered, engaged partners who want to create a team, a working group, a prayer circle, a mandala of intention, an entrepreneurial initiative to change the way care is understood and received and practiced in the world. Or something like that.
Okay. And I think if I understand correctly, the next step for MettaCare is that you write the manual.
The next step for MettaCare is to exist. Right now, I'm working on a manual. Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, it exists as an intense, practiced, enacted longing that has been invested in to the tune of hundreds of thousands of hours by many people and, millions of dollars by mostly me. And I want to cross the threshold where that practice is resourced by the world, so that it can be born in the world. Right now, it's been born in a sacred temple of this practice that David and I have helped to anchor, and many others have helped to grow and energize.
Mm-hmm.
And David and I continue to anchor. Did you get a chance to see his email from today?
Clemens, David Clemens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
And so right now, yes, I'm working on the manual. The V1 first manual. I don't know if there's a library of manuals or 10 versions, or, if I'll just get it perfect the first time and we can all go home. But there's a lot to do yesterday,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of possibility in that. And just depending on the team and the resources and the coherence as we grow, like, that informs what comes next. Does that answer your question, or did I miss it? I got lost in there.
That answers the question. I asked the next step was to create the manual, and you said the next step was to exist, and you're creating version 1 of the manual. I don't know what to call them, but for lack of better term, like the parent companies, the incubator, the umbrellas that Tyler was referencing in that call. Are they not-for-profit? Do they have not-for-profit status?
Yes, right now, Tyler, I think, is the president or head of PHE, the Precision Healthcare Ecosystem, which I helped to collaborate into existence.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a formal member of the organization, but definitely informally in the conversation. She definitely sees a place in that 501c3 for the project MettaCare to be held and to exist. And that institution has enough integrity and structure to receive funding to support the project. Meanwhile, we have an existing 501c3 that's current and up to date that I've been stewarding for a number of years. It's mostly dormant. It's got a small bank account and me as the sole director right now. That's Open Field Awakening, 501c3. I also have an S corporation, Open Field Awakening also, which houses currently my consulting practice. And I've got a tab open on my browser right now that I might want to put on your desk, just Googling up L3C, which is considered a low profit organization, which is, as I've mentioned, maybe a hybrid between a nonprofit and a LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And I just subscribed to a Facebook group today, waiting for the acceptance of that application to enter a community of people from the Enlivening Edge newsletter, which is based off of Frederick Laloux's work in reinventing organizations.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a community of people interested in these kind of evolved organizational structures. And I went into that community because I'm looking for a forum to ask the question, has anybody used an L3C? What other legal entities are people using for these cutting edge organizational structures? Because I know we have the capacities and the intelligence on hand to drive a really evolved organizational process. But the legal support and housing for that is one of the questions I think we want to start answering earlier than later. And so,
right. Got it. And what would be the reasoning to not go with a traditional 501c3 not-for-profit?
I don't know that there is offhand.
Okay.
I mean, except that you can distribute equity in various ways that can incentivize maybe a more diverse, a more ad hoc set of parties to feel like they're coming to the table with something to gain.
Okay.
I mean, more than just something to give.
Yeah, I understand that.
In the overall framework, I think in the activities of the MettaCare initiative, which I think are integrative to itself, I think there are aspects that are very practical to employ as a for-profit activity. And there are also activities that I think are very practical to employ as a nonprofit activity. For example, version 1 of the manual, assuming that comes together well, I don't see any reason not, other than profit seeking, not to just publish it as widely as possible for comment, use, practice, whatever.
Okay.
And at the same time, the work being done at the core of this organization creates a consulting practice that any government or healthcare system or institution might want to hire to come in and talk sense.
Right. Yeah, other than the giving equity for investment, everything can be done under the umbrella of the not-for-profit. So I guess you would just have to look at.
I want to learn.
Yeah.
It's just about learning what these things, how they function. What's the flying car of today? What's the electric of organizations?
Yeah, and what feels most organic and natural to you and the organization itself. Like MettaCare it's very quickly going to become its own entity, you know, standing on its, so we'll do that research. L3C. Were there more? We were talking about cooperative the other day.
Yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. Cooperative. Enlivening Edge website. I have some links on on a variety of these things. It would probably be good for you if you're going to think about that. You did do the 2-hour Frederick Laloux lecture video.
I don't think you sent me that, but I'll look again. I mean, I went through a Frederick Laloux lecture video.
Yeah.
Is he French?
Yeah. He's Belgium.
Okay.
But
maybe.
If you,
I didn't have 2 hours.
If you don't have the link, let me know. It's
okay.
a great place to start thinking about what else is possible in organizational development. And then we should look at my original sketches for the precision healthcare ecosystem.
Are those Star Trek looking flow chart things?
The mind map with everything all mashing together.
Yeah. That was on my mind. Like, okay, I think I'm ready to start diving into that and letting my brain fade a little bit into that ether.
Yeah, I mean, our friend Forrest encouraged us to just quickly form a sociocracy, constitution for sociocracy 3.0 and formulate as an L3C. And that was, before his encouragement for that had caught my attention as a possibly very interesting organizational structure. And yeah, this is just about creating real agility and real ownership and real permeable boundaries for collaboration and expansion.
This question just bubbled up for me. If precision healthcare ecosystem were to funnel donations to MettaCare through their 501c3, and then at a later time, MettaCare decided to have a different corporate structure, would that harm precision healthcare ecosystem in any way?
Well, not any way that we would do it.
Okay. So just off the top of my head, it seems like that would be a really immediate way to find funding.
No, it's a deeply, deeply aligned and synergistic relationship.
Okay.
Mike Carisu, my doctor, who introduced me to Tyler, who's also Mike's patient, and Tyler are, I think, 2 of the 3 or 4 board members of Precision Healthcare Ecosystem. And Mike has been a practicing participant in the MettaCare experiment for implicitly a decade and more, and explicitly, at least 5 years. So Precision Healthcare Ecosystem and MettaCare are in very meaningful ways one thing. At a certain level, an intersection. There's definitely a Venn diagram there. And in the last at least a year, has been a very practical and very active collaborator in thinking about moving forward, questioning, designing MettaCare.
Okay. Are there staff there?
No, it's pretty shoestring.
Okay.
Tyler is very staff. it would be an injustice not to recognize all the work she does probably every day for that organization.
Exactly. Not to diminish that at all. I meant like other humans, other people.
Yeah, I mean, there's the precision healthcare ecosystem has at least the 3 or 4 board members that I can think of off the top of my head, and maybe 5, and a number of projects, e-learning platforms, and they've got I think they are the formal home of the Project Apollo patient group, which so I don't think there are any paid staff of that organization right now. They do have some project monies and have paid collaborators in that organization to do things like build an online learning platform. In fact, my S corporation acted as a consultancy for one of those projects for a period of time, and still is actually under contract for that, and I've received funds for that.
Okay.
In terms of like a back office, though, that like can handle a bunch of
There's not a grant writer on staff who
not whose full-time activity is just busy writing grants for any project that might be interesting. No.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious, what would it take? Because David was talking about, grants and receiving a grant, giving a grant to MettaCare, but also, what to do to receive a grant. And I'm like, yeah, why don't we do that? If they're a 501c3 and really the existence of MettaCare going forward is dependent on funding.
Well, let me answer that question pretty directly. The project proposal that I'm working on in the background that is going to take a few months at least right now to get writ properly is that first step towards that grant.
Got it.
You saw from Bijal's message yesterday, there really isn't a coherent material set yet. I mean, aside from just the hulking mass of all of the data that we've generated, there isn't a coherent document anywhere that says, you want to understand MettaCare? Read this. Right, and that's what we're working on. And so that's why looking for personal funding right now is so important, because we don't have yet the resource to describe for a grantor why they should write a $300,000, $500,000 check forward 18 months or something.
Clear. Thank you. Stop, change, start. I had another question and now it's kind of floated to the back of my mind. I'm just going to sit and let it marinate for a moment.
Yeah. Is that your note? Stop, change, start?
Well, I wanted to switch from talking about funding to talking about the next thing, or even get back to what we were talking about before. And I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it was to all that to say that, okay, I get it. I get that the personal funding and why that's a focus right now. I don't know. Talk. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah. So let's make sure that we have touched deeply enough in your first question, which is like, where are you? Tell me more.
Okay. So what's been bouncing back and forth in my mind since starting this conversation a week and a half ago with you, is, wow, this is not at all what I came here to do.
I'm sorry, say again?
This is not what I came here to do, but it's so what my heart has been longing to do. And it's so good for me personally. And I feel like I'm also like contributing something that's very nourishing, you know, beyond like the tangible, physical, and, you know, making food and cleaning up.
Did you put my water bottle for me?
So I'm trying to, I think with that question, I'm trying to like connect what I thought I was going to do in coming here and then what it actually looks like it's happening.
So our upcoming developmental conversation will be really helpful here. And
Okay.
listening to Lalou's presentation will also provide some additional structure for that. But part of what MettaCare understands is the nested wholeness quality of things. And so part of our challenge as, you know, a species so far has been that we tend to take our developmental strata in distinction from each previous layer. And that predisposes us to specialization, which is a wonderful, important quality, but it isn't the whole enchilada.
Right.
And so the fourth person perspective, which is only just emerging with any force on the planet in the last 100 years and really practically in the last 50, 25, or 5, is the first time that we'll see the whole species together conceived as an integrative whole. And so in a holographic sense, that's true for the biosphere and true for you and me and true for you. And so there are these nested presences of nested presences of what we embody.
Anything else? You're happy out here?
Yeah, I think I can get this computer in with me when I...
You can take it in?
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, I will see you Friday night.
Friday afternoon at 3.
Afternoon.
That's great.
And Saturday.
And I'm in conversation with Cassandra to see if she can pick up Saturday.
Yeah.
In case that's supportive of you and helps Lydia get more surface area with more people.
Yeah, that'd be cool for her to work with Cassandra. She's super amazing.
And we don't know if Cassandra's plate is too full for that yet. We don't know if her plate is too full for that yet.
For sure.
I'll keep you posted.
Cool.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
I love you. Thanks for being here. You have a great day.
Promise.
Ciao.
Bye, patient.
Hi. Wow. Good to see your face.
So, you know, it's not a stretch to imagine you as the president of MettaCare, right? That's one hat that's not unreasonable to throw on our chalkboard of ideas, right? At the same time, you're currently practicing as a caregiver for Kabir. that at the same time, you're currently continually improving your own practice of self-care. At the same time, you're opening up a space in Bankers Hill, San Diego, to see clients in a systemic, one-on-one contextual fashion and provide care services of a sort, with massage and other counseling and treatment. And there are 100 other roles that you might inhabit between your practice altar at 5 in the morning and the national stage as the leader of a movement, right? So the reason I brought up that evolutionary strata issue is because in the previous iterations of our social constructs, you kind of have to pick one, you know, or if you were lucky, you could do 2 and maybe 3.
Right.
Probably just 2. Right? But the pace of progress, which is a powerful expression of the modernist movement and the 3.0, 3.5, the third person individual objective perspective that has had such force in influencing the planet over the last 250 years, values the pace of progress. In the fourth person perspective, that context aware movement begins to prioritize the pace of integration. And we're talking about a change that is as monumental as moving from hunter-gathering to agrarian in the disposition of the species. And so it might not be easy to just imagine the like, oh, just hop over this little fence. But in all of that, you know, unpacked at length, is the reality that you do your spiritual practice, you do your self-care practice in the morning and all day long. You, for some period of time, care for, and sometimes, you know, care for Kabir as a caregiver, and or anybody else that happens to be in your field for whom you do that service for love or money, you know, or both. And at the same time, you see patients in your clinic because that fulfills something integral to what your practice is about. And at the same time, you know, you're zooming to Washington, D.C. to influence policy. And at the same time, and you're moving at a different pace, but it's an integrative structure of your expression. It's not a growth only focused
Right.
in your progressive engagement. So, you know, today, I would love it if you were like the second ox with me at the front of this little cart, you know, pulling this initiative forward. And there's any number of places that you can stand, and all of them depend on what's true for you. In the same way, you know, where does PHE stand? Like, could this happen and then that happen? Yes, but only in a way that did no harm, right? And only in a way that built integrity and capacity and reach.
Beautiful.
So we address that, Salad, or do you have more questions about place?
We nailed that. Thank you. That's fantastic. And I get it. It's like, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's the three sisters doing today?
Well, you know what? Can we just pause for a minute? Because I'm just thinking out loud.
Uh-huh.
I post this recording of this conversation
Okay.
to others and possibly to a wider audience. Does that work for you?
Yes, and then we don't have to talk about three sisters.
Well, and we can, but
Okay.
I just want to, for those listening, those are my 3 pressure sores we've been dealing with the last few days. I'd like to just stay focused on the MettaCare larger visional, questions. If there's more of that, otherwise to shift gears.
Well, yes. One thing I got about MettaCare is that it's care in all directions, not just a certified person coming in to take care of another human who needs assistance, whether it be in the home or a facility or whatever, do the job, go home. But it's there's care, like what I experienced from you is you're also invested in me being cared for as a human being as much as, I show up for you as a human being. And the question for me that arose was, do we need an evolved, quote unquote, patient to have this MettaCare model work? Or does it work regardless of the developmental state of the person being cared for?
I love that is the exact question that Tyler asked. I don't know if you remember this from the video that you referenced earlier, Tyler and Dave and I.
The exact question?
The exact question. And I spoke a bit to it in the email that David is replying to today. And that you have asked it again is really exciting because it helps reflect for me just how intensely rich that territory is, really. And the answer is essentially that, yes, it's not a certified professional coming into the space to bring the product offering of care, although that can be and is probably an aspect of it. But MettaCare is more a process facilitated by written work, by lightweight and deeper coursework processes, consultation, facilitation, service provider, systemic networking and function, all of which serve the essential goal of helping the individuals in a language indigenous to them, regardless of their developmental state as an individual or a care system of a family or an organization or a nation or a world, to more acutely see the care that they are already enacting, the care that's already present, the care that they already have at their deepest level of concerns, and to help them gain facility in working creatively and more effectively and more efficiently with that care. Essentially recognizing that care is like clean air or water, a resource that's present for all of us all of the time, and it functions better when we learn as individuals to steward that resource more loving kindly, to reference Metta in the MettaCare, and to do so in collaboration with wider and wider circles of others, in the same way that, you know, a commons will steward a watershed to make sure that everybody is in balance and has healthy, clean water. So this is about adopting a new view in humanity, where we think of not just the physical ecosphere of the planet as a resource to steward, but also start thinking in terms of care and love and other subtler qualities that you can't stick with a fork as actually meaningful things that we must attend to if we really want to flourish and have well-being.
I love that.
So yeah, so the short answer is yes, it can be done with anybody wherever they are. And it looks different depending on the way that we are reflecting one another. The way your developmental capacities in a given instant are meeting my developmental capacities in that moment.
Okay. I got it. So it's not just the natural ecosystem that arises around your magic. It can be replicated and magnified. Great.
Yeah, I mean, another way to think of it, it might be, it's just care hygiene. You know, and as we grow, we can get more and more sophisticated with this.
Yeah.
It's basic, it's just like brushing your teeth.
And it becomes an ingrained habit. Wouldn't that be amazing? If loving kindness was just as habitual as brushing your teeth. Wow. I think that answered my questions. I have a couple takeaway assignments for myself. The call to action email, I guess, that the conversation with Bijal was referencing, is that something that you have posted on Facebook? Like that crowdfunding, etc.?
I posted versions of that crowdfunding invitation on Facebook. I don't know that I think I posted a shorter text version for Facebook than the one that I sent out to a handful of people on email.
Okay. I'd like to send it out. I know we have a few overlapping groups, but not all. Just to get it out to a wider audience, a little bit wider audience.
Doesn't hurt.
Okay.
You know, and maybe I can get this video posted this afternoon, and you can reference this conversation maybe as a way for people to connect more with you in this context and learn more about what we're actually talking about.
Okay. Okay. This is exciting. And yes, I'm very much enrolled in being another ox pulling the cart right there next to you. What a worthy endeavor. What a worthy endeavor.
Just to reflect, I'm really touched. It's either an apple or a tennis ball just cruised by down the hill.
random.
Your statement about policy and on the national level, it really, broke open a sweet, sweet, sweet place in my heart. Like when I now give myself a moment to be with that statement, to be with what you shared there. My experience of that is such a precious synergy, of what we both want at a deep level. And that we just kind of like, in this moment, have happened together. And it's such a big longing and such an important one. And it just, what incredible good fortune or providence or grace or divine intervention, to have that kind of synergy presence. It just stops me. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Did I interrupt something?
No. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, the three sisters are marching right along. Charlie quite possibly left the building. I just want a few, you'll see in the morning, we'll make a final on that.
Good.
Just because you got the most coherent and robust view on the project. Betty sounds like she's almost done. And it sounds like the skin is completely closed, and even the scab has worn away on Alice, and we're just focused on strengthening that skin there. So
wonderful.
And another hour and a half on my side this morning and medication. And
great news. Thank you.
Tomorrow you'll start training Lydia, because to teach is to learn, right?
Yes, it is. Big time. So we're just going to go around this whole circle. You had asked me the other day, what's important, like what am I engaged in, what's important to me in the rest of my life, and we went through like dog and my spiritual practice and self-care and a number of things. And why I'm going to Wyoming is to do an in-person workshop with Kate Stillman. And Kate Stillman she's an Ayurvedic practitioner and a yogi who developed a system of teaching like 10 habits of Ayurveda so that people can really heal themselves and their bodies and be in more flow with like that rhythmic daily rhythm and also seasonal rhythm of life and being alive. And I've been in her program for about 6 months, and I've been in another program based on her program for about 9 months. And that's part of what I want to offer to people in San Diego and also remotely. And it's what has me thriving, post-acute PTSD, and also post-acute mysterious autoimmune disease. And I don't know why I neglected to mention that the other day, but it's super important for me that people get this information and lifestyle habits, to live optimally.
That touches back to the nested question of how I would see you in MettaCare, your own personal practice of self-care and your practice of offering massage and Ayurveda and these practices that you're describing now, that is your indigenous truth. And if that's not pouring through you at some level, in all the aspects of your life, then you're missing opportunities. And MettaCare, in this, my view of this future way of being for humanity, doesn't miss those opportunities.
Yeah.
Because what you learn, if we just say let's just say you're a certified instructor in the 9 ways of Ayurvedic integration, whatever.
Yeah.
That is something you can hand from person to person. And it's valuable and it's useful and it's meaningful. And at the same time, those practices scaled down to inform your first person self-care work, but it also scales all the way up as well as intelligence and wisdom that informs the way you sit in a conversation in Washington around national healthcare policy. And it's not that national healthcare policy enforces everybody to be an Ayurvedicist, but the wisdom and wellness that you develop throughout your lifetime by taking that perspective, that wisdom and wellness actually informs the conversation in Washington in a way that it wouldn't if you weren't integrating all of those things. And so, yeah, it's just, I want to just reinforce again and again that where you long to stand is where you must stand. And we must create systems that support people to stand in those places. And because that's the wealth. We're all the wealth of the world right now. And right now, we're leaving most of the wealth of the world in poverty.
Yeah.
Leaving most of the wealth of the world out of the conversation. Most of the wealth of the world out of the wealth of the world. Hey, brother. Hey, brother.
I feel so truly lucky to be in this conversation with you right now. Thank you.
I know the feeling, sister.
You sent me a video of that talks about CEO evaluations. It wasn't a video, it was an article. You sent me an article about evaluating CEOs.
That's Fred Wilson, probably?
I think so.
Yeah, the ABC blog?
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
And you said, I'd be interested in what you think about this. And I think I had more questions than opinions about it until what you just said about my background, my education, what my heart longs for is what informs how I interact up and down, how I manage both up and down. And now I understand more about that, what that article was saying, and how certain CEOs can manage up really well, but not down, or vice versa, and how to account for the discrepancy or potential dissonance in that management. This might be a conversation for another time, but now it makes so much more sense. So thank you. Just got some.
I just see you with a kind of director energy, and so I like that's really why I'm inviting you into those conversations.
Yeah, no, thank you. My experience has mostly been as a solopreneur, maybe like managing a small team of a few people, or midway in the corporate structure, managing, 3 or 4 small teams of, varying sizes, from 10 people to 20 people. So I've never been in that conversation at that level, but it definitely interests me. I'm willing and open to learning.